Hello and welcome to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. Happy to have you back with us. I'm your host Gary Morgan. With me, as always, is my good friend Jim Stam. How you doing, brother?
Doing good, man. Just the dog days of summer, Gary, for
Yeah,
this baseball team, isn't it?
it is, man. And for once, because it's been a while, this week it's just the two of us.
Yeah, we just look, we just want the spotlight all right here, wherever you are on camera or on
Really,
screen.
really, in reality, we both have a whole lot of crap we want to yell and scream about, and
Yeah.
you know, just couldn't have anything in the way of that this week. Happy birthday, Jim!
Thank you, sir. Yes, that's
Congrats.
my dedication to the show. Even on birthdays, Gary, we do the show. So,
It's true. It's true. One more trip around the sun. Good for you.
yeah. Thanks, bud.
Boy, we're gonna start by not bearing the lead. We're gonna talk about Oneil Cruz to start with, and I can't say it was entirely unexpected news that, things weren't necessarily going great. The team wasn't exactly leaking out a ton of video of him running around, were they?
No.
Um, you got a few little shots of him fielding grounders on his knees, and we got a couple mentions of him starting some kind of a running program. Tom Tomzek said that he had plateaued. That was the word he chose. And I mean, I think that's probably expected as well. You kind of get to a certain point with a recovery where, that's especially something like that. I don't know how many of you out there have had something like that. I've had more than I care to mention, but um, once you start breaking down that scar tissue, it hurts, man.
Yeah.
and and it's not necessarily like it's hurting you. It's not hurting the injury, but it hurts. So, I guess I can expect that something like this is going to happen, and we're running out of time. I just don't think he's going to play
Yeah.
this year.
Yeah, that's what sucks about it is I thought that last month was really important. Some people disagree with that. I just say like, get back, get in the swing of things, get some games under your belt. That was ideal. I mean, let me also say, Gary, I've plateaued a long time ago, so we don't, so I get it. But look, I don't think this is like I saw some people talking about like, oh, this is just a bad sign, and it's because it was such a serious injury. I don't think it's anything like that. I think it's much more what you said, which is this sometimes happens. I
Yep.
think he'll be fine physically, but yeah, man, it was such a crucial year for him to get all that. That first full year of development at the major league level and see what he's capable of, and it's just a shame we're not going to probably be able to. We don't know anything. It's just all
Yeah.
signs are pointing to that he's not going to get any reps in this year.
Yeah, and I mean, it was always iffy. So I guess I'm not like super panicked by it or caught off guard or anything, but still, I think it would have been really nice to see. Now, on the other hand, here are the Pirates. The only good thing that came out of this, really, if you ask me, is really being able to get eyes on a whole bunch of middle infielders that I otherwise don't think we would have. Now, the bad side of that is I don't think they found too many answers for shortstop, really. Alika Williams can play the position really well. I think I've been kind of impressed with Leovar Peguero. So there's a couple, and Tucupita Marcano wasn't horrific there, but
Mhm.
all in all, I don't think we would have gotten through all these guys had we not. So what I want to know is, in the last month of the season, why are we wasting time with Vinny Capra playing second base? Like, I don't need to see that. I don't need to see that, like, for many reasons. One, like, I don't care if he goes 20 for 50 the rest of the time he's here. He is not going to be here next year.
Mhm.
Look at the roster construction. He's not a part of this. Period.
It also too, we have gotten a look at a lot of guys. Nobody's real aside from Piguero, he's the one that's like at least shown he's got some real upside. But, we talk about all this depth in the middle infield. Well, it's just another reminder of is it looks great on paper and you start shuffling through some of it and you're like, well, I mean, maybe it's not where we thought it was. Yeah, the Nick Gonzalez thing is obviously going to be on people's minds, and I know it is on yours too. He's done some good things since he's been back down. I don't know if they want to recall him that quick. I probably would. I would. Because again, I'm with you. I just don't need to be seeing these types of guys right now at the end of the year. It just looks like they're buying innings and at bats wherever they can just to finish it out.
If you have Vinny Capra on the roster and he sits on the bench and it's because you just don't want to have a prospect sit on the bench, 100% in your corner. You start starting him 2, 3 times a week, I've got a problem. I don't want to see him 2 or 3 times a week. I want him when you absolutely have to sit Hayes. Or there's an injury and you got to throw in that extra middle infielder or something along those lines. There's just nothing to be gained or learned from it. And at
No,
this point of the season, I want to gain or learn something.
right.
Like Alika Williams, for instance. I like him. I really do. Just flat out, I like him. I think he's a good defender. I think he can handle the stick pretty well for what he is. He's a twiggy hitter. That's what he is. I don't mind that. I think there's a place for that. I've talked about that several times. But we've given Alika Williams a good long run here. Gonzalez is down there in AAA crushing baseballs. He's a number one pick. I think he's going to struggle to make the roster next year. Take advantage of the time you have without Oneil Cruz. Get him up here. Let him play with Peggy. Use the time you have so that you make informed decisions.
Yeah,
That's all.
because yeah, right. Because at least you could get a look at that for the last month, that combination, and really, really judge it and see what it looks like, on a day-to-day basis. But Shelton, Sherrington, wherever all this is coming from is, man, they just cannot leave that lineup alone. They cannot leave people playing day to day,
Nope.
and we understand why it's sometimes catching, like you don't catch the day after a night game, and it's an after. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about just like the constant tinkering that, and with guys that shouldn't be playing anyway.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's near
so,
never ending.
and this is year 4, so it's just one of those things where, like, you just flat out as a fan get tired of seeing it, quite frankly.
Yeah. So Robert Hagelin here, before we go to a break, wonders what he'll look like. He's talking about Oneil Cruz. He wonders what he'll look like next season. Seems to remember Jason Kendall took a while to return to form. Until you see it, you're going to worry.
Yeah,
I mean,
and and Kendall's injury was horrific. I mean, he had a foot hanging by skin
yeah,
type deal. I mean, so and played a different position. The good thing is Kendall came back. He was fine once he did get back to form.
yeah.
So I don't think it's that kind of a situation. I don't know that that's what that gentleman was suggesting, but you know there are
And one
degrees to things.
one more from Swan here. How many more wins would the ball club have if Cruz had remained healthy and in the lineup? I don't think anybody could possibly tell you. Part of the reason that I think it's so disappointing we missed time with Oneil Cruz this year is because we don't really know what he was going to be 100%. I mean, we saw, what, 300 at bats from him? I mean, you really needed to see that sophomore season play out, understand how the power was going to mature. How was he going to handle lefties? Was he going to grow into somebody that could take advantage of both sides of the plate? Was he going to be somebody that was kind of, you know, hard to play against tough lefties, or was he going to
You,
do enough damage?
you're going to get to see all the ups and downs, which there would have been, how he responds to a full season. So not only do you push that back a year, he hasn't played.
Yeah,
So, it's a double gut punch,
it
at
really
least.
is, and there's just no sugarcoating it. It sucks, but I guess the worst scenario would have been playing him too early and having him get hurt again. You know, so let's take a quick break. Come back. Let's talk about Henry Davis.
Mm.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
All right, and welcome back to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. Jim, we ran a poll question. We got over 1,100
Nice.
votes. Can you believe
Nice.
that?
Yes, because it's a
That is
interesting topic.
crazy. Last second too. Yeah, it's just a weird topic. Because we put it up before the injury happened. So it says, have to wonder if this is doing Davis any good at this point. Should they consider AAA or just keep doing this in major leagues? Obviously, that decision was taken out of their hands to a degree because he got hurt. But I don't think it changes really the intent of this poll. So we're going to go ahead and talk about it. I gave you options: major league right field, major league catcher. AAA right field, AAA catcher. I was shocked how evenly split it was. That's a lot of votes, so this matters. This isn't just like, 30 people,
Right.
picking some stuff here. 36% say major league right field, which I think the Pirates tend to agree. I think that's probably what they're doing. AAA right field got 20, almost 24%. AAA catcher, 18.3, and major league catcher, 21. So I've heard most comments I see directed towards me about Henry Davis are basically whining that he's not catching. I totally thought this poll was going to 100% back that up.
Yeah.
It did not. So I mean, what do you think of those results, man? Like major league right field won pretty big.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm glad that the poll was evenly spread out, because I think it is a tough question. It sounds like people are at least approaching it logically, rather than the loud screaming of a few about him catching, which I think is the last place he really needs to be if he's not ready. Um, you know, I I think he's the kind of guy that can handle it. It's painful to watch him in right field a little bit at times. But was it carrying over to the plate? I don't know. He wasn't healthy. That's what I'm hearing. He had been battling this thumb. So I don't know, Gary. I mean, what do you think? Do you think that they got it right? Where do you stand on it?
I think he's going to be a right fielder. I really do. Um, I've always kind of felt like they're gonna give him some catching opportunities to more placate him than necessarily um, hope that that's what he turns into. But I heard Derek Shelton on the Fan this week doing his spot with Cook and Starkey, and yeah, I don't know, man. If I'm reading between the lines, it doesn't sound to me like they think he's got that in him. And I also think Endy has something to say here. And Endy's progression has been pretty quick. He actually is fixing things that you notice are wrong almost on a week by week basis, which I got to tell you is extremely advanced for a prospect for a young kid. So I think Endy probably has more to say about this than Davis, really. They have to have some place for him to play every day, and you don't want to waste that arm as DH. So I think he needs to learn to be a right fielder, and I think over the off season he'll figure that out. But it's going to be painful to watch until he does.
Yeah, and I from day one, I always questioned whether Henry Davis would end up as a catcher. Did I see it playing out because of these reasons? Probably not. I just wondered if that wasn't going to be his end destination, especially if he could hit. I don't. His arm is so good. You're right. You don't want to put him at DH. It's the biggest attribute he has as a fielder. At least when he's not tracking balls and seeing them and taking bad angles, he at least has a cannon out there. First base, I always thought that could be an option for him, but again, you're wasting his arm. And who's to say he acclimates any better to that? I don't know.
Right.
Looking back on it now, when they took him, he just flat out needs to hit. If he hits, I don't know that it's as big of a deal, because I do think you're right. Endy is just more fluid and more athletic, and has really, really looked capable back there. He's got holes, don't get me wrong.
Oh yeah.
Things he's got to work on. But you can see the potential in him every time he's behind the plate.
Yeah, and it's not perfect. Like we know Keller doesn't like throwing to him. Now, that's something they'll force Keller to become okay with next year, I'm sure. But for right now, they're kind of letting him have his personal catcher of Jason DeLay. That's fine. Jason DeLay is doing okay too. But you've noticed Johan Oviedo calling his own pitches now.
Yeah, I saw that.
Well, that's a couple people, probably arguably the two most important starters they currently have on their roster.
How many do they have, Gary?
Well, but I'm saying they're the ones that have been here all year, and they're bucking against Endy a little bit. So we'll see how it all plays out. But
and of course, you get into the off season, and then pitchers and catchers, and they get to work together a lot more at that point. So there's some familiarity and some I don't know, not to be cheesy, but bonding that's got to go there, and
sure.
and they'll work on that. And I think you'll see them get along. I think if Keller wants his own personal catcher, I think he's earned it at this point.
I think next year this probably won't be an issue.
Yeah.
I just think right now I think Keller was very comfortable with what was going on with DeLay and Hedges, and he felt it had him at a certain point. And then whether it's coincident or not, he started struggling right around when Endy started catching him. And for whatever reason, he's not struggling now. So either Endy needs to absorb from Jason what's going on, or Jason's going to be Mitch Keller's, personal catcher.
Right.
It's just the way it'll be. And there's nothing wrong with that, really. Until you get to the playoffs, and then that stuff gets ridiculous, because you all of a sudden are like, okay, well, I know we let you do it all season long, but now we need his bat. So sorry.
Yeah, and Jason DeLay, he's actually just, if you were just using him as strictly a backup and whatever, he's actually really good in that role. He's very capable of being your backup catcher and giving you exactly what that position requires.
Right. I see a lot of you in the chat talking about Jack Sawinski. We'll get there. Keep your pants on. It'll be all right. I want to read some comments from this poll question because I got a ton of those too. So I just want to make sure that we got to get a well-rounded response here because some of yins were mad that I didn't put first base on there, but that's because I think it's that unlikely. So I mean, I just
Yeah.
didn't do it. Um, Frank says, I would rather see Davis go to Indy and work on his catching. They can keep Bay in center field, Reynolds in left field, Sawinski in right field, and work in Palacios in right field too. So it seemed to me like his answer was almost more about other players than Davis. Again, I think if he's going to work on catcher, AAA would be the place to go. I think that's probably your first indication that they're not all that serious about it.
They both can't catch.
They both can catch. They both can't be a MLB starting catcher. That's the difference.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, they like if you wanted to split them like 3 and 4 every week or something, you could do that, I guess, if you really wanted to. But you're always going to have somebody that calls a better game. You're always going to have somebody that certain pitchers like throwing to better. You're always going to it just adds an extra layer to matchup issues that I'm not sure you necessarily want to play with. I don't know how many you remember. Like, think back to the early '90s. I mean, certainly that's right in my wheelhouse. But the Pirates had Don Slott and Mike LaValliere for a long time. Now, neither of them are at the caliber that we're hoping Endy and Davis get to. But it was a strict platoon sometimes, man. Like, you knew Sluggo was going to play against lefties, and you knew Mike was going to play against righties. Period.
Yeah.
That was going to happen. Then when we got in the playoffs, Leland wanted defense, and he played LaValliere pretty much the whole time. So, I mean, there's always going to be little things like that. And I just think when you start introducing stuff like that, you can't have two stars share a position. Not going to happen.
Not
So if you think they're both going to be stars, let go of it. Let them go to right field.
It's a luxury. This team and this organization can't. I mean, we're not loaded like that. You can't. You got to put it where you think you can get the most out of both. I would think.
Our buddy Casey here says, with his attitude, sending him down will piss him off, and I kind of like him being pissed. Yeah, maybe it would, but I mean, I think another thing that we probably haven't given any kind of thought to was how long Tarek Brock was out sick. It was almost 2 full weeks he was out sick. He's the outfield instructor,
right?
So when he was working with Henry pretty closely out there, I did feel like he was starting to get a little bit better at running routes. But as soon as he was gone, there was just no Shepherd, and it just completely went awry. That brings me to a question, Jim, that I think is interesting, at least.
Okay.
Derek Shelton admits that the hand injury was going on for a while. Why in the world would you ask him to push through that?
Yeah, the injury thing I've been thinking about the last couple days, and I guess it's like, when did Henry tell them? What did they know, and when did they know it? Type deal. If they knew it, and you're asking him to push through it, and the guy has had some hand and wrist stuff before, and he's really struggling at the plate, aren't you doing him a disservice?
Yeah.
People just think he's out there failing. Well, I mean, maybe there's there's probably a reason for it other than baseball's really hard. And I get it. Like, you get stuck in this gray area probably where, like, you're trying to manage things with players, and you don't want to be a complete open book, because, like, whether it's Kutch with the elbow that we find out, actually has been bothering him, or the Davis situation, you don't need to make that available to other teams, and all of a sudden they're just getting pound everything
Right.
inside, and that's not helping things. But the flip side is poor Henry Davis. So, like, it started. We've had enough injuries this year to start thinking about all this, and then so I don't know. I think you get in a real quandary type catch-22 with it.
Right. I don't know. It was just an awkward situation for me. It felt like it's an unnecessary risk to take with somebody that's that important, who's clearly struggling in an aspect.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were looking for an excuse, I mean, he's got one.
Right.
And Derek Shelton's going, oh well, it shows his toughness. Yeah, sure it does. But I don't know like if I need to see him being tough right now. I mean,
I don't think anybody questions Henry Davis as being a hard-nosed ball player.
yeah, but like I don't know if I need to explain to people because Henry says it's a thumb issue. The Pirates say it's a hand strain. Now, I don't know what to believe there. I guess I believe the player.
Well, the point is, it's your hand. You got
Either way,
it.
try gripping a bat with a hand that don't work.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like unfathomable to me. Okay, now it's his
Hard.
right hand, so it's not like the dominant hand when he's hitting. In fact, that's why there was all the confusion about him shagging fly balls because he could still do it even after he went on the IL. So that's what he went out to do. But I don't know. To me, why push the envelope right now when you don't have to?
Well,
That's all.
you said something that actually made me think, well, like, yeah, I mean, how many times do they almost create injuries to get guys off the field that are
Sure,
struggling and give them whatever it is, a breather, a rest, reset, whatever you want to call it. I mean, we know they do this. Every team does.
sure.
All of a sudden, the guy that's stinking out loud has arm fatigue or something. You know what I mean? Something.
Yeah.
Um,
Will Crowitis.
yeah. So it's just curious. I don't know the answer to it. There's a lot of stuff with Henry Davis as we go along. You maybe can start to question a little bit.
Okay, so I think that wraps up Henry Davis and where we feel all that's going to come down. I think we both feel right field's probably in his future.
I think so.
I think we both feel given a full off season, he'll get better at it. He's
I
an
think
athlete.
I think he will. I think
Yeah,
will he ever be great out there? No, but if he's just average and he's got a good arm, that's fine.
yeah. I mean,
But he has to hit. He's got to hit.
I think he can be at least as good as Tatis in right field. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
that's what I'd like to see. I expect you to kind of look ugly sometimes, but get to mostly everything because you're fast. That's pretty
right.
much what I'm hoping for. I think all in all that'll work. That'll shake itself out, and I don't think it's a bad pick if he doesn't like immediately, or if he's not a catcher. I mean, they've drafted
No,
a bat. I mean, I just don't
that's what I
understand.
keep. That's what I
I
keep
just don't
saying.
understand that thought process.
Got to hit. If he hits, everything will work itself out. It's not the waste. The waste isn't if you have to move positions. The waste is if you just totally get the pick wrong, and he's
Right.
not. And he's not. He's a number one pick, top pick overall. It's got to work.
And I don't think we're there. I think
No,
it's way
thank
too early
goodness.
for all that stuff. But let's move on to Jack Sawinski. We talk about him a whole lot. Still mired in it right now.
This
The
is long, long,
the
long.
facial expressions are just becoming like lost puppy esque at this point. Like he just looks like has no clue what is right or wrong at this point. I just wrote a whole thing on Jack Sawinski and I kind of broke down like where he's being pitched and where he's got the best exit velocities and where he's got the best batting average and everything. What I found, man, is that most of his pitches that he sees are off the plate away and off the plate down. And he has good exit velocities up and away and down and in. I just feel like he maybe needs to expand his zone a little bit and start reaching some of those up and out fastballs especially because he can really do damage with those. And he has when he's made connection with them. The exit velocity numbers are great. They're over 100 for an average up there. He
Yeah.
can do it. I just think like something like that to kind of make people understand, like, if you're going to nibble me, I'm going to punish you anyway, would change Jack Sawinski from what he is into the next level. Now, to his credit, he has shown the ability to learn over off seasons, and he is a studier. So I do expect him to come back better next year. That said, how long do you let a kid like this beat his head against the wall, brother?
I don't know, man. I will say this about Jack Sawinski. He is married to the approach, whether it's what he wants to do fully or not. But
Yeah.
man, he is sticking to it. But man, Gary, this is it's long. I keep expecting him to like break out of it, and he is not.
Yeah.
And you're right. How long do you let a guy like that just flounder at bat after every at bat? And we get into the bigger topic with him, which I know everybody is wondering, is like, man, if you're not going to expand the zone early in the count and you still want to stick to that, but my goodness, you can't do the same thing with third strikes. That he takes good pitches for third strikes, let alone the stuff that's off the plate.
I have to interrupt here. Dave White's asking, how long do they keep Andy Haynes? Now, Dave, you listen to the show every week. I'd have fired him
Yeah.
last year. You know that. I mean, like, I've been on that fire Andy Haynes train since, almost 3 months after they hired him. I don't like this approach. It doesn't work for everybody. And I think for a guy like Jack, who again is a studier, I think Jim, if I had to classify him, I'd almost call him teacher's pet, if you know what I mean. Like, he wants to do what he's taught and he wants to excel at what he's taught, and he has. They asked him to get better with not chasing pitches, and he's got an elite whiff rate. And what it has done is rendered him absolutely impotent at the plate if somebody does not throw a ball right in the frisbee size spot he's looking for it. That's what it has done to him.
Yeah.
And they're going to have to correct it. And if they keep Andy Haynes, that's not an Andy Haynes skill set. It's not an Andy Haynes skill set to tell you, hey, sometimes you got to swing the bat, fool.
It was a bad combination this year with what we're seeing with the strike zone and what's being called, and teaching taking pitches and hunting walks. And you've got a strike zone that seems to be wider. I don't know what all the data is saying, but we're all watching the games, and they just have not adjusted to that at all, in my opinion. They went in game one like that, and now we're sitting at whatever, game 100 and whatever, and they will not change it. They are not changing it.
And I'm going to tell you it's worse than that, because it's not about the strike zone. You're talking about them not adjusting to the strike zone. Nope. They're not adjusting to their zone where they can get hits. That's Andy Haynes' system. That's what Andy Haynes preaches. Andy Haynes doesn't preach don't swing if it's out of the strike zone. He preaches don't swing if it's out of your zone.
And I guess
Jack is a guaranteed strikeout.
That's a good distinction. I guess I'm focused more on like the two strike hitting type deal where they're still not even adjusting it from that. But yes, that's a very big distinction.
It sucks though. It sucks to watch because it's talent like just wasted. It really is. And I'm not saying Jack would be an all-star if he was somewhere else, but I'm telling you, it's hurting Jack. And it hurts Brian Reynolds at times. And he comes out of it at some point. And what does he do when he comes out of it, Jim? He starts hitting those fastballs up and out over the plate the other way, doesn't he? And then all of a sudden, what happens? opportunities to turn on balls down and in because guys realize they have to pitch you in the strike zone because they're not able to get you out on those cheap calls anymore. Brian Hayes, what's he doing? Turning on balls that before he was taking inside corner for strikes, right?
Yep.
You
That's
have to
100% with Hayes for
you
sure.
have to hunt borderline pitches in this league. And that's why they don't translate from AAA to the majors. Because Andy Haynes' system works perfectly almost all the way up through the system. You can do that all the way up through the system.
But when you
And
get to the
then when you
majors,
get to the majors against pitchers that can hit the corners 90% of the time, you're
or
done.
stay out of your hot zone,
Right.
whatever that is. Yeah.
And you know who's successful? Guys that don't listen to him. Peguero doesn't listen to him. And it's probably because it's not in his skill set to listen to him, to be honest. Is not his type of hitter. But he doesn't listen to him, and what does he do? Hits bad balls.
Yeah. It to me, it's just a real bad convergence of a lot of things. Andy Haynes, young players, and a strike zone that is weird this year. And look, if you're not going to adjust it early in the count, okay, whatever. I don't think that's good, but especially when you get the 2 strikes to just sit there and just hope for the best when you're being shown time and time again that they will call those pitches.
Yeah.
And pitchers know it. Just back to your point, it's the majors. If they know they're getting that call 3-4 inches off the plate, they'll hit it again.
Yeah,
They'll
and I'm
hit
not
that.
talking about Los Diaz because that's what you're talking about, those 3-4 inches off the plate ones,
Right.
where he was consistently. In that case, I don't care what your approach is. Some of those balls are unhittable for a right-handed batter. They just are unhittable. Not going to hit those pitches. So you shouldn't swing at them, even if your umpire is literally blind. You just shouldn't swing at them. You're not going to make contact. It's not going to lead to good things. It's not going to help you in any way, shape, or form. But most of the time, the umpires, yeah, they're bad. The zone's wider. Yeah, they're calling balls strikes sometimes. But we're not talking like they're taking things like 4 or 5 inches off the plate and getting called strike all the time. We're talking right on the black. They're taking it. You
Too
should
close.
not be doing that. You
Too
just
close.
can't.
Too close to take for sure.
You have to be able to do damage against that. And if you can't, or if you don't, or if you just stand there with the bat on your shoulder, umpires get bored, man. Yeah,
And
it's
you know,
true.
I don't know if they've told Jack, listen, we don't care about the strikeouts. Get on base and
Yeah.
hit home runs. But you know what? He's not hitting homers right now either. You know, he can still hunt a walk, but they're happy to do that if you're going to let them,
Yeah.
especially in this lineup.
One more point on kind of like how you know it's Andy Haynes. Because Andrew McCutchen has gotten hot now. And what has he stopped doing in the past 2 weeks? Walks. He's had one in the past 6 or 7 games. Now he's swinging the bat and making contact and getting hits. It's not as though he was playing badly before. It's just now he's not hunting walks. He's hunting damage.
Yeah. And he's got a little bit more of a seasoned ability to be able to do that. But
exactly. He could do it. He could walk 2 times a game if he felt like it. That's how good Andrew McCutchen's eye is and his back control to foul things off. Most of the time, he could probably walk 2 times a game if he felt like it. But you don't want guys that are hitting in the middle of your order hitting like that.
No, and if you've got a lineup that doesn't necessarily scare anybody, they're happy to walk you here and there. They don't fear that. They don't. I mean, why would you fear that?
Sometimes, dude, it sets up the freaking double play perfectly for you.
Yeah.
it's awful. So like, hey, I got to answer this real quick, and I'll take a quick break. All the sports 17, just general question about the podcast network. What happened to the pitch show? Corey got super busy covering the Steelers, and we're actually doing one tomorrow morning. So, or
Nice.
Saturday morning. Sorry. So, yeah, it'll be back. Sorry.
Ooh, football. Hey,
Out of my control.
I'm never turning down a football question, even on a baseball podcast.
Absolutely. Let's take another quick break. When we come back, I'm going to hit you with a few surprises, brother.
All right.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
All right, welcome back to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. I want to answer a question I saw come in the chat here because I think it's interesting, Jim, and you and I have avoided talking about it for a long time. How much do we think the game will change when they bring in the strike zone challenge system like they have in the minor leagues? I don't think it'll ever come here like the minor leagues. I think they'll have it much more ironed out by then. And it'll probably have the strike zone pretty tight. Right now, the challenge system in the minors, I think, would probably expand the game more than the major league front offices are looking for. You know,
They don't
after
want it.
doing everything.
Yeah, like the success they've had with
Yeah.
clearly the fans like it. They're not gonna walk that back, I don't think.
Right. And there's other things going on here too. They're actually trying to improve the system a little bit more. They're trying to make it a little more 3D. Now, the problem with making it a little more 3D is it could create, if you're a good enough pitcher, where you can bend something into the very back of the zone and it's only a strike for about, half of a millisecond
Right.
before
Because
and it's
gonna
a
count.
strike,
Yeah.
and I think there's things they have to do to make that a little bit more realistic, because if they don't, like if it's just a 2D like you see on TV where it's just the box, first of all, where do you put that box? Do you put that box like out in front? Do you put it in the back of the plate? Do you put it in the middle of the plate? That really makes a difference for one thing. If it is just a 2D box though, a guy like Brian Reynolds, he'll probably bat 350 and walk 150 times.
It's gonna be wild to see it, whatever the finished product is, because the framing has become such a big part of every game.
Yeah.
Like it's, the more I see of the framing, I
Jason DeLay is really deliberate with it too. I'm actually surprised he gets as many calls as he does, because he'll pull it up a full 6-7 inches sometimes.
I know, but they get the calls, and so like it has taken over the game a little bit,
Yeah.
and I just feel like I don't blame them for doing it. Like if you can do it and get calls, of course. But I think like eliminating the framing aspect of thing is going to totally change some things.
Right. And I should explain some things too, like, because we have somebody here who's like, I think should be as simple as like the Hawkeye system for tennis. No. The strike zone for Aaron Judge and Termar Johnson is not the same size. Think about how many different strike zone sizes that they have to have pre-programmed into this system to work. And then we're not talking like even their batting stances at that point. We're talking just general raw height, right?
Yeah, Oneil Cruz versus I don't know who's really short on the Pirates right now, but yeah.
I mean, that's why I used Termar Johnson, because Yark's watching and I knew it would set him off.
And he can't wait for his arrival.
Right. So, I just think there's a lot more that goes into it before it comes to major leagues. There's a reason they're testing it down there. I haven't seen it become much of an issue, But if I'm honest, I don't fully understand the challenge system yet. To me, it should be more instantaneous. Like the umpires almost get some kind of a buzz that tells them to call it a strike or a ball. But
And how
yeah,
many times can you use it? I mean, like,
right, because it could be ridiculous. Think about it. You could have one at bat, like say you have like a 10, 15 pitch at bat. You could that could be like a 5, 6 minute at bat if you have challenges in between there, depending on how long it takes and everything.
but won't
And
it be weird? Won't it be weird to watch a game where you just can't argue anything? Like,
yes, yes,
like because, and
it'll take
that's
some
what's
of the romance out of the game.
yes, but the flip side to that is, Gary, when we are watching games now, and this is just how I view it. I don't know. Tell me what you think. Everybody is complaining now about the strike zone. It's not just fans. Players bitch about it. The opposing managers are bitching about it. Like it's constant. Like everything's wrong, whether it's wrong or not. And then you're not getting this call, and then you want it there. Like that's all been part of the game, but it's gotten so much involved in everything that, like, to me it's taking away from the game. And yeah, I don't want to remove it because, like, you're talking about the personality of how it used to be, but we can't go in at bat now sometimes, or an inning,
Yeah,
without it. Like everybody is bought into it. It's not.
it's got to get better. But here's the problem: you introduce technology and prove through a challenge system that you could have every single one of them right. Nobody's going to settle for less than 100% right at that point. So to me, if you're going to introduce it, eliminate the human element altogether. Have the umpire stand back there to call safe and out and whatnot, and judge check swings. But aside from that, they got a little pitch calm, if you will, up in their head that tells them it's a strike or a ball, and they call it accordingly.
And they're
And
called.
just eliminate the problem.
And
Don't
what the yeah,
don't mess
and
around with it.
right. And of course, umpires will still be involved in, like, the pitch clock and things like that. But what does it do to the catching position? We've talked about that before, but like, I mean, everything that's valued now, not everything, some things that are very valued right now go away immediately.
Really
So
framing. That's it.
yeah, but that's huge, right? I mean, like it's become such a big part of the game. So, man, I do think it's going to change. Like, to answer his question, I think it's going to massively change a lot of things, and they better make sure they have it ironed out before they use it.
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be an interesting thing, man. So the Pirates are playing the Cubbies, and Cubs are doing okay. They got some pitchers, I think, that have kind of emerged. Justin Steele, especially. Um, they're what, third in the division right now, second in the division, I
Yeah,
think, behind Milwaukee. That's probably where they're going to finish. Feels to me like Cincinnati is falling backwards slowly. The kids
right.
are catching up with them, and injuries are catching up with them a little bit. The Pirates are in fourth, held their own against the Cardinals, took them a little bit. That was good and everything. How do you feel about the season? Because they're definitely at this point gonna clear what they did last year. I don't see 70 as completely out of the question. But how do you feel about it? Did they improve enough, you think?
Um, Probably not. And I don't know, record wise, like, people get really caught up in the record. I guess if I was just looking at the team and I didn't know their record and I didn't know they had that 20-8 start, am I sitting here feeling all warm and fuzzy? No. I mean, I think the pitching, look what they're doing right now to cover innings. I mean, like, Gary.
That's why you are who you are, because you segued exactly as I'd hoped you would.
Well,
The
hey,
pitching is a problem.
Gary, this ain't our first 100 shows now. Come on
No,
now.
we're on the second 100 now, so we got to start over. But
That's right.
I think the pitching is the problem, brother. That I don't feel good about it. And Luis Ortiz just looked god awful the other day.
It's
And
painful to watch.
it's sad because as good as he and Rawanzi both looked when they both got called up, they have regressed to a point where it's hard to even pretend they're going to factor in next year. I don't even know if I could pencil them in for a bullpen right now. You know what I mean? Like, if you
I
told
mean,
me right now that Rawanzi had pulled a hamstring and wasn't going to play the rest of the season, or that happened to, say, Hernandez, I would be more upset about Hernandez. You get what I mean? Like,
right,
that's how far
right.
down the pecking order he's fallen. They don't want to give Jared Jones a chance right now because he's not on the 40 man, and they don't have to put him on the 40 man. So I don't think we're going to see that. Priester wasn't ready. Ben Charrington didn't really want to call him up anyway. We're left with basically like, hey, can Andre Jackson be a starter? What about
And
Thomas Hatch? Hey, how about Osvaldo Bido? What are we doing, Jim? Like,
well, this is part of the fallout of when you lose just guys that were going to give you innings with Brubaker and Velasquez and all this. But like, man, they're just anybody that can start a game, they're going to cover some innings, and it just looks ugly. I mean, everybody. This is again I say this, and I'm not trying to preach to people, but this is why whenever you sit there and you list, we've got Ortiz coming, and we've got Contreras coming, and we got Priester, and we got Burrows. Do you?
yeah.
Do you have those guys coming? Uh, I mean, it's rhetorical, but
Yeah, I don't know.
yeah, those are like four dudes that right now you don't know if they can be anything.
Yeah.
To
I mean,
to to
and you
at
can't.
least as a starting position caliber type
The
guys.
worst thing is the offense is. I know people are going to chew this apart, but like, for instance, here's Nicholas McKee. They have a team of solid bench guys, and sadly, that's an improvement. I don't know how to explain this besides they're all children. Like, they're not at the height of their powers. You expect them to improve over the years. That's how this works. You don't call up a bunch of rookies and expect magic. But it's going to take some time. So, like, next year, you expect a little bit of improvement from a lot of these kids, right? I think the offense is kind of moving in the direction I want it to. It's starting to come together, aside from Andy Haynes. I like the pieces that are there. The pitching, though, you can't go into next year with Oviedo and Keller and not do anything. Like, you can't rush up Solometo. You
No.
can't really rush up Jones and expect him to be a starter. He may make it next year. He should make it next year. But you don't count on that. You
No,
don't count
Jerry,
on Priester next year after what you've seen. You don't count on Ortiz after what you've watched. You don't count on Contreras after what you've seen.
how could you?
Right.
I mean, how could you even begin to think of that? Okay, Ortiz fails as a starter, you might get him in the bullpen and find something, but if you can't find his control, he ain't pitching anywhere.
Yeah, but that's what worries me, Jim, is like we've kind of mowed through these guys, and I'll be honest, man, they've made it worse. Like, they've actually, I think, taken steps backwards. And I don't think it's from fatigue. I think it's from, like Jason Mackey said today, it looks to him like they're filling like Ortiz's head with too much. And he's not a guy that absorbs it well. Same time, same day, heard Dayon say, sounds to him like Ortiz doesn't work hard enough. So, like,
Oh man, I
well,
didn't
I
hear
mean,
that.
like, what is it? You know what I mean? And where are Oscar Marin's wins here? You've got Mitch Keller. I think you could call for the year he's pitching in Oviedo as a win. You know, he's done enough to say, okay, you found something here. But aside from those two, what's he done? Are we giving him credit for Quintana? We giving him credit for Vince Velasquez for like what 7 weeks of Vince Velasquez?
Yeah, because for all we know, Velasquez right now, he could have reverted back to not being very good.
Sure could. So I mean, there's a lot of I think questions on the mound, and I just don't see any way to address it feasibly without going out and buying it. And Jim, I think they have to get two because you can expect Lightning to strike once. You can expect one of all those names we mentioned to come through and kind of work their way into it and win a job in spring. But you can't expect three of them to do it.
No.
So you better have that filled.
Fans just expected the three or four we talked about to do it, and
Yep.
they didn't.
And if they don't do it, Jim, they officially start wasting offensive talent as of next year.
Yeah, they're in a really, really bad position if they don't. Yes, Skeens will come into the picture, obviously. I think we both know that they'll try to keep him down until it makes sense, as far as control-wise goes. But I agree with you. I think you got to go get two, and they can't be Rich Hill, and they can't it can't be that. It cannot.
Right. So James Littleton brought up something to me this
Oh,
morning that I thought was interesting about Paul Skeens. He said, like, I understand all this manipulation stuff. I get it. I totally do. He goes, but would the Pirates consider maybe like just going, hey, Paul, here's a 10-year contract and just start him right away and just get all that out of the way and be done with it? My answer to him was like, first, I had a lot of answers for him, but the first one was, I don't know how you'd value it. You'd have to think like he thinks sky high, and you got to think the Pirates think from a talent standpoint sky high. But if you're talking 10 years, you're talking like by year 10, you're paying him what, 30 million, right?
yeah, I
I
don't know.
can't see him being interested in that, but it's not a horrible idea. Like the White Sox did it with Luis Robert. We saw the Mariners do it with Julio. So, I mean, is it something that maybe they should consider? Do you think in this market something like that would ever be a play?
Boy, you've seen it on the other side of things with hitters, right?
Yeah.
Obviously. Pitching. I just don't know.
I'm asking you this on a day when Shohei Ohtani is probably headed for his second Tommy John and Steven Strasburg is retiring from the league.
Yeah. I would
It's
think
tough, right?
I would think a guy like Skeens says thanks, but no thanks. That's my first impression.
But would you do it?
But would I do it?
Take the sense and reason out of it. Would you do it? Do you think it's a smart play for them to even try to do? It's a tough question.
I would probably commit that to more certain things, just in case.
Yeah.
And
what about Oneil Cruz? Because I saw you propose that today on Twitter.
Yeah, like to me, I was thinking about it in the sense of, you know, if they had kind of opened that door with him with long-term talks, you could revisit it now because it is a lost year and he's not young. Like he's young. Okay, he's not old, but he's not 22. So he's 25 and a half by the time the season starts next year. Then you factor in the control aspect of it.
Yep.
Then you factor in the fact that he hasn't done it yet. I would be willing to explore that with him. I think that's a risk I'm willing to take, on that side of things. I would roll the dice with Skeens because I think it'd be tough to get that 10 years out of him anyway. So I would just take the 5 or 6 that you got and hope
Right.
that that's great. Does that make sense? That's how I would look at it.
It makes sense because I think every individual is going to have a different point of view on something like that. Again, I think I came down where you did. I think it's unlikely on Skeen's part that he would be interested in it, and
But if you're
that's even pretending that Bob Nutting would do it.
right,
I,
right, they're so risk averse. I can't see it. But I would think if you're Oneil Cruz, wouldn't you at least be thinking about it? Gary, when's he going to be a free agent?
yeah, I,
You know,
he would be 31. I'm not sure that I would want to be reaching the land of milk and honey for the first time at the age of 31. That said, he would have already probably made well in excess of $100+ million from the Pirates, so it's not as though he would be destitute. And I think Livy might make some money too. But you know, it's
yeah,
a difficult decision, man. I don't know, and a difficult thing to even talk about. But it's cool. It's a cool
yeah.
thought.
And to bring this full circle back to what we were talking about with pitching, we talked about mentioning you've got Keller. Well, we don't have him extended yet either.
Yeah,
So take him out of the mix. They're 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 running out of time on some of this stuff.
yeah. Got to get Keller locked up for sure. So one last question here, Nicholas McKee. Were you guys surprised Skeen signed considering a terrible pitcher development and prospect management?
No,
Nicholas,
no.
listen, I'm pretty patient with you. I try to answer your questions. I'm not nearly as jaded as you are. I'm really not. If you want to ask real questions, we'll talk about them. This isn't that. This is just a shot at the Pirates, which we all know they are what they are. Okay? I get it. One more here from Yark. Let's see. At this point, you just kind of eat the control years on Skeens. I think that's kind of what you were saying too, Jim.
Right.
You kind of just have to chill and just let it happen and maybe realize like that 5-6 years is all you're going to get. The thing you really have to hope for is that Tommy John doesn't happen during that.
Mm-hmm.
If Tommy John happens during that 5-6 years and you lose two of them basically, then this sucks. You want that to happen afterwards or before he starts. That's the truth. And I think in a way that's the brilliance of that 10-year idea because then you can kind of absorb it a little bit. Otherwise you get forced into a Jameson Tyon situation. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So it's
And
a tough thing, man.
well, I saw today that the Nationals are. I mean, the money they have to eat on that Strasburg extension is insane. They didn't have any of it insured. You're talking 35 million a year they're at different points of that thing. So you gotta be really careful about how you would do that. I think we've got bigger fish to fry immediately, and that's where I would be focused on. Now back to York's point with Endy. Again, I think it's just bigger fish to fry.
Yeah. I think they have a lot of that money deferred out too, which means we're looking at Bobby Bonilla territory here.
Sure.
The Nationals, man. They went for it. They won a World Series. You have to start wondering if it's worth it at some point once you start taking the hits that come afterwards. It's a shame because I know they really tried to put a good team together and they made some good decisions like not retaining Rendon. Look what that's done to the Indians, or not the Indians, the Angels.
Yeah.
Sorry, but yeah, it's tough. Last question for you, Jim, before we go, and you get to go celebrate your birthday and eat your pizza finally and everything.
Right.
Shohei Ohtani. I thought he was going to get 500+ next year, in free agency. I don't know how you do that now with two Tommy Johns. He's not going to pitch next year for sure if he gets a Tommy John surgery. I guess at some point he could hit. maybe like Bryce Harper did this year, even though Bryce Harper kind of beat the odds and came back earlier than I think anybody thought he would, including his doctors.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so chances are you're paying for half a season next year and then hoping that he's still a pitcher when he comes back, and still a starting pitcher, mind you, and still an
At,
effective starting pitcher, mind you.
at 31, with two Tommy Johns.
Yeah. So how do they play this? Does somebody go out and give him the big bucks and bet big, or does somebody just go out and try to sign him for a few years and kind of let him have his big payday another time?
It's wild, man. I will say first and foremost, it just sucks. It
No, it
sucks.
sucks for the game, dude. They're my
Sucks.
cheat team. I watch them
Yeah.
every.
Sucks for him. Sucks for baseball. Sucks for the fans. You hope you don't. You hope it's not one of these things where like 40 years from now, 30 years from now, you're just talking about this like supernova that we got to see, and then that was it.
Yeah.
But it could go so many ways. I think Ohtani is an interesting guy too, in the sense of I don't know what he values and how he looks at it. So I just think it could go all kinds of ways. There'll probably be a team that figures we can afford to still pay him a ton of money, and we'll recoup it in a lot of different ways, even if it doesn't work out. So I still think there's a big contract out there for him.
I think
because he's going to be able to hit, and he's alone as a hitter. He's still fantastic. So he
certainly is, but he is not a Cy Young candidate and MVP hitter in the same breath.
And maybe you could foresee him coming back and doing like more like a bullpen type role. He could certainly do that, and maybe that would be easier on his body. But it goes back to showing, like, Gary, he had his own. The Angels let him do whatever he wanted as far as taking care of his arm. I don't know if you've seen all the videos and all the workout stuff, and like it's all what Shohei Ohtani wanted to do. And a guy like that was probably doing anything possible he could, still didn't work out. These damn arms and these elbows.
It's not natural, man. It's not natural.
What are you going to do?
Nothing, but it's funny because, the days of Nolan Ryan just aren't going to come back. Maybe that's probably where we should come down on that whole Paul Skeens conversation from earlier. If we get those 5-6 years, let's consider ourselves lucky.
Yeah, I think that's how you're going to have to look at it. It's a risk. It is always a risk with pitchers. If you feel you've got one that has the potential to be great, that's what you do.
And you don't waste pitches in the minors. So,
yeah,
honestly, get through playing the games as quick as possible. Get the extra year, screw Super 2, get him up here.
And get some pitching around him so you're not wasting it from the jump.
Absolutely. Hey, brother, I got nothing else, and I want you to go and celebrate with your family. So,
yeah, dude, appreciate it. Hey, good talk. Good talk. It was good. Just, hey, no offense to anybody else, but sometimes me and you just got to have a chat.
Yes, and no technical difficulties this week. I can hardly believe it.
That was pure luck.
Good stuff. Hey, so everybody, have a great week, and try to take in the rest of these games in a good nature. Okay, like, these are kids. You want to watch them improve. You want to get frustrated, I understand, but like, don't decide what they are right now, because the Pirates certainly aren't. Most of this cast is going to return next year, and you might as well just embrace that, because they're all going to show up in spring, and they're all going to have opportunities to make this team again in 2024. So if you decide that they stink out loud right now, I guarantee you're going to see a different player next year, and you're going to have egg on your face. So,
hey, save it for the Vinny Capras of the world.
Right. I mean, I already did that, but so, hey, Ben, take it away, brother.